just like how you're going to react when I give you my number 5 overall pick here, Les,
All
because
right, let's get to it.
this is the guy I've actually seen play live, and I'm very excited for him to come to start anew, even at the expense of, well, whatever you want to call Indiana's football program. And that's Deshaun McCullough going from IU to Oklahoma. I was surprised when he committed to Oklahoma. I really thought he was going to be a shoe in for Notre Dame with the way with his heritage and the coaching there and all that stuff. But I think with Brett Venables, he has a chance to be one of the defensive players of the year in the Big 12. I really like. I think that he could be like the one thing that keeps that defense afloat. He's a great piece. He's a leader, and I'm just really excited to see what he does out there. So I think that a guy like Brett Venables, who's made stars of defensive players before, especially up there, I think he's got a good shot to be the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. I think he's going to be a key cog in a defense that was sagging last year and may improve this year. There's just too many questions on the offense for me to really be on board with Oklahoma, though. We've discussed that many times, but I love Deshaun McCullough. That's why he's my number 5 pick. I think he's one of the best defensive players in the country, and I think with Brent Venables, a defensive-minded coach, allowing him to explore his talents further, he's going to be a very solid piece and a defensive player of the year candidate in that conference. Moving on to number 4, we're going to go to the Big Ten for this one. Dante Cephas, and I hope I'm saying that right, going from Kent State to Penn State. And that's just really fun to say, number 1, but that's not the real reason. Les, you know Penn State is always solid defensively. There are very few seasons where we talk about a bad Penn State defense. They also have an incredibly deep running back room this year. They've got some talent in there, and they have a 5-star quarterback in Drew Alar. And, those things combined, they're great. They're good. You can establish the run. You don't have to score a lot with a great defense. But once you establish the run, we always go with the Madden principle, which is run the football. Then you can establish the passing game later in the drive. But if you're going to establish the passing game later in the drive, you've got to have a really good pass catcher. And that's why I'm excited to see what Cephas will do in that Penn State offense, because I think it's the perfect opportunity for him to thrive. I think with the way they'll set the run up and not have to be super reliant on a high quantity of scoring, that he's going to have a really good season going over the top, even against those tough, and I'm going to be honest, tough Big Ten defenses and tough Big Ten quarters. Now, number 3, Les, a team you're very high on to the point where you've been arguing on Twitter and YouTube simultaneously with this fan base about their place in the world. Well, you always say that the Alabama dynasty is over. And one of the things about the Alabama dynasty that they always had, that Georgia is now taking on, besides all the defenses, is there were always a crap ton of really good wide receivers on those Alabama teams. The depth there was just incredible. And now Georgia is emulating that with my number 3 picks in a way. Ra Thomas coming from Mississippi State, and Dominic Levet, a highly underrated player coming in from Mizzou. The SEC is starting to gravitate towards Georgia, and those two guys, you combining them with Brock Bowers, and you're telling me that that offense is going to be just as, if not more, explosive than last year? He had 846 yards last season, 71 catches, 71 yards per game, and then you just did oh crap, I had my train of thought going so well. He had Lovett had 800 yards plus. Robert Thomas was a good player. It doesn't matter that they lost Adonai Mitchell or DH. They've got a hell of a roster there going on, and you've also got Lad McConkey coming back too. So they've got a deep receiving core. Those two guys are veteran weapons. They're good weapons. Like I said, these guys may be on a couple of programs you don't think of when you think of the SEC, but they played in the SEC, which means if they got 800 yards against some of those defenses, they're a pretty good player. So Ra Thomas and Dominic Levet coming from the other SEC schools into the Georgia Bulldogs. Move number 3. Really impressed with that move. I think, like you said, that's why Georgia is going to be the team to beat going into the future. At number 2, a move that I really liked when it happened. I'm very excited to see what happens, and that's Sam Hartman going to Notre Dame. For some reason, that just really works for me. I mean, We know he has nearly 13,000 yards in his career and the ACC record for touchdowns. But, I think if you give him a team like Notre Dame, which feels just like it feels like you're going from a car that was pretty good, like you're going from a Camry in Wake Forest to a Rolls Royce with Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman. You've got a really good defensive team around you. You've got better offensive weapons. Yeah, the schedule is a lot tougher, but you're a proven leader. You're a veteran leader who's been in some tough spots, who knows how to sling that pigskin, and that makes a world of difference to me. I really like that Sam Hartman move. I think he's going to play out really well wherever he goes. And number one, a move that I really liked because it proved a point we made last year, which is, sometimes the big classes don't always pan out. And that's a guy who was part of the great TAMU haul of last season, who's now leaving, in Denver Harris, a really talented young cornerback who was coming from Texas A&M to the LSU Tigers. And I know I have to praise LSU, but I've got to praise LSU where I can, because this is a great move. This guy Denver Harris hasn't seen much action. He was suspended, but now, I mean, the LSU is the defending champion of the SEC West, and I think this team is even better just based on raw talent and abilities like they're getting with Denver Harris coming in. This dude is going to be a playmaker. This dude is an athletic freak. He can be a ball hawk, and now he's in a situation that seems a little bit more stable than what was going on in College Station, and I'm really excited to see how he slots in with an already really athletic LSU defense. I think he can be a difference maker if they want to have a chance to upset Georgia in that SEC championship game if they both get there. So those are my top five. I'm going to go through it one more time, just in case everybody at home wasn't paying attention. Number 5, Dasan McCullough, coming from IU to Oklahoma. Number 4, Dante Cephas, leaving Kent State and coming to Penn State. Number 3, Ra Thomas, leaving Mississippi State, and Dominic Levet, leaving Mizzou, to both come and cement an already explosive Georgia team. Number 2, Sam Hartman, leaving Wake Forest to become a Notre Dame Fighting Irishman. And number 1, Denver Harris, extremely athletic defensive ball hawk, leaving Texas A&M to venture into the bayou of LSU.
So before I get started on mine, I do want to address a couple of yours. One, I have a gut feeling that this is not going to be the last time we talk about Denver Harris on this podcast.
No.
Just to throw that out there. Number 2, and I want to talk about your statement about Georgia, because you made a very good point. This is no longer the Georgia that we are used to seeing, where they stack the I formation and just run it down your throat 4 yards, a cloud of dust. This is a modern offense. And I think that's just the nature of the new style of football that we're seeing. And now even that the SEC teams are adapting it, it's just only getting more exciting to watch. And of course, you add those 2 weapons. That was one thing I noticed about the last couple of years in Georgia's team, is that they're spreading it out. They're running a more modern offense. And of course, when you bring in 2 receivers like that, like Matt said, have SEC experience, it's only going to work out in their favor. Another thing, as for your number 5 pick, only because the fans expect me to say this, Jaylan Ford is going to win Defensive Player of the Year in the Big 12. So we're clear. I had to say that.
That was coming, and I was totally fine with that, because I'm like, I'm gonna have to. He's gonna talk about Jaylan Ford for about 5 minutes after I get done with Dasan McCullough.
If I wanted to, I could start a Jaylan Ford fan podcast where I just talk about nothing but Jaylan Ford.
You just follow him around with the camera. Hey Jaylan, how's things going today?
Hey Jaylan. Like, make him hate me by the end of it.
Unless, the amazing thing is too, I was thinking about the guys who I didn't talk about. Like, I basically was like, the people are tired of hearing about Colorado. I'm not going to talk about Colorado. And then just before the podcast, they get like their 4th guy transferring in from Florida State on the defensive side of the ball. And USC gets a cornerback transfer just like minutes before we start the podcast. And I'm like, I'm not talking about you two. Stop it.